I'm about to finish this book, guys. Am I about to finish this book or is this book about to finish me? I don't want to read it. I don't want to read it. Hey guys, what's up? It's Belle. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello. And if you've come back, thank you so much. Okay guys, today we are in a crisis. We are in a reading canyon. We're not in a reading slump. We're in a reading canyon. We are at the bottom of the slump. We've broken through. Like, we're in a bad place. Okay, so first of all, apologies for the lighting. It has been raining. Anyways, guys, if you guys saw my April reading wrap up, you'll see that yes, I had quite a successful reading month. I read 12 books, which is kind of odd for me, I would say. Like, it's definitely a lot more than I would normally read. Keeping that in mind, I did let you guys know that I just feel like I am hate reading like everything at the moment because I feel like I want to read, but I'm not enjoying the books that I'm reading and I like can't keep my attention span for the entirety of the book and things like that. So I just feel like I am in need of a reset. Nevertheless, I am so excited for today's video, you guys, because it is sort of a combination of A, something to help me get out of my slump, but B, something that you guys have been asking for a very long time. So today is going to be the start of rereading my favorite books for an entire week. As requested, this video is going to be a full spoiler reading vlog. Now, if you guys have been subscribed for a while, you will know that I do like to keep my channel spoiler free. I just think it's the most considerate thing to do. But I've had many requests now, both over here on my channel and on my other social media platforms, to do a either like full sit down spoiler talk about all my favorite books, or of course do a reading vlog and fully talk about my favorite books. So I thought today would be the perfect time to start this and give you guys my full spoiler thoughts as I reread some of my favorite books. So I thought before we jump in, I will show you guys the books that I'm planning to read this week. That way you're getting a heads up to know what books are going to be included. All right, so I have 4 books that I'm planning to reread this week. I have the biggest grin on my face because these books truly, like at different points in my life, just reignited my love for reading. They hold such a special spot in my heart. They're like my Roman Empire series books. So let me just show you what they are. In no particular order, I don't know when I'm going to read these, but the first one is Twisted Games. This is by Anna Huang. It's the second book in the Twisted series. This is a princess bodyguard romance between Reese and Bridget. Up next is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I think I read this back in 2021 or 2020 when it first came out. It is the rivals to lovers romance between the first son of the United States and the Prince of Wales. If you can't tell by the shirt, I was not going to do this video without rereading Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, because not only is this my favorite book in the entire world, but it's been really interesting in the last couple of months as well, just to see how many people in my comments are Bridgerton fans, Pollen fans. Alrighty, those are all the books, you guys. As I said, I don't know sort of what order I'm going to do them, but I'm sure you're about to find out. So without further ado, let's get comfy, let's get cozy, and let's get right on into this reading vlog. Alrighty, hello besties. It is time for our very first book of this vlog and I am so excited. Now, this is obviously one that I love a lot. I love all of them a lot, but I wanted to kick it off with a bang because I feel like out of even the 4 that I picked, just in the place that I am with like my reading mentality, I want to go to something that I know I love and will love every single time. My first reread is going to be a tried and true. So we are starting with Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. For those who haven't seen me yap about this before, I do apologize. This is, of course, the 4th book in the Bridgerton series. So for those who are unaware, Bridgerton is a Regency era romance series. You are following the Bridgerton family. There are 8 siblings in this family, and each of the books is one of the siblings' like individual love stories. So book number 4 follows Colin Bridgerton, who is the 3rd eldest brother in the family, and Penelope Featherington. So Colin and Penelope have lived across the street from each other for pretty much their whole lives. Penelope has been in love with Colin since she was, I think, like 15 or 16 years old, and she just feels like he is never going to see her. Basically, this is the story of like how their story begins. We do see Colin and Penelope throughout the first 3 books in this series, but this is when their love story sort of takes flight. What is going to be really interesting, I guess, before I go back into it, is now that the show is out, to reread the book, because I reread the book again before the TV adaptation came out last year. I am actually going to read my original copy. I think it's going to be super nostalgic just to see what I wrote all those years ago, because I used to write a lot more in my books when I used to annotate a few years ago. So I'm going to sit with you guys now and let's do some reading. For those who want to see my annotation tabs from back in the day, I used to put quotes, romance, spice, and I had a tab for crying. I think now my general romance tabbing system is quotes, romance, and spicy scenes, especially the spice, so I can chat, like I can track like the meter log. But crying, that's a different one, Belle, that's a different one. The first line of this book makes me literally feral. On the 6th of April in the year 1812, precisely 10 days or two days before her 16th birthday, Penelope Featherington fell in love. Let me see how good I got that. Yeah, I did it good. Okay, on the 6th of April in the year 1812, precisely 2 days before her 16th birthday, Penelope Featherington fell in love. Let's see what our girl gets up to. I've literally written on the first page, haha, not him falling off his horse. Colin and Penelope meet when, obviously, just before she turns 16. Colin is 5 years older than Penelope. So I guess for those who have seen the show, the book Romancing Mr. Bridgerton actually takes place many years later. So I think in the book, Penelope is 28 and Colin is 33, I think Colin is in the books. So Penelope has been a spinster and like on the wall and on the shelf for a very long time. It's not like in the show where she is still like 20 years old. She's like 28, Colin is 33. So it's been many, 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 many years. Colin and Penelope obviously meet each other when her like bonnet falls off and whacks him in the face and he falls off his horse. And she says like that she thinks he's fully gonna yell at her, but he didn't even give her a stinging set down. He didn't yell, he didn't even glare, he laughed. He laughed. I'm like a couple of pages in, but I just wanted to mention something because it's really interesting how well, especially the third season, but the show in general is adapted, like lines and things like that. I'm just reading this bit about Penelope like making her debut into society and things like that. She says this line that says, deep inside she knew who she was and that person was smart and kind and often funny, but somehow her personality always got lost somewhere between her heart and her mouth, and she always found herself saying the wrong thing or more often nothing at all. And if you have seen the show, that happens actually, I think she ends up saying this to Colin, like that exact line. She says that to Colin in episode 2. She actually says that exact line. So it's really cool. That's my first little bit that I've seen make it into the show. So what is so brutal in the books, there is this moment obviously where Penelope overhears Colin saying that he would never marry her. Basically this like sort of conversation happens in 2 different instances. So in the show, he is talking to a group of like friends of his, and Penelope walks past in the garden and hears him saying, I would never dream of courting Penelope Featherington. But in the books, I feel like it's so much more brutal because it's actually a conversation that Colin is having with Anthony and Benedict in the Bridgerton house, and Penelope's there visiting Eloise and she overhears it. So he says, and I'm certainly not going to marry Penelope Featherington. She overhears it and it becomes this super awkward conversation where she's like, I never asked you to marry me, and I never said that I wanted you to ask me. And he's like, I'm so sorry. They have this like mini confrontation almost, and then Anthony ends up walking her home. I feel like in the book, it's just so much more heartbreaking because, oh, I just love her so much. One of the absolute funniest things in Romancing Mr. Bridgerton and in any of the previous novels, Eloise has no idea that Penelope is Lady Whistledown. Just gonna put this in here because I don't know if I mentioned it earlier. For those who aren't familiar with Bridgerton, there is a anonymous gossip writer called Lady Whistledown, and she sort of narrates, especially in the books, the first 4 books, gossip columnist that everyone is trying to figure out the identity of. That's who Lady Whistledown is. And spoiler alert, that is Penelope. In the books, you actually don't know that. For the first 4 books, you only find out in this book that it's her. Eloise is just so wrapped up in her own little world and is so oblivious that she, in the books, actually never realizes and never discovers that Penelope is Lady Whistledown. Actually, you know what's so crazy? They're just speaking about Whistledown. They have literally just said it's been 10 years since Whistledown started. And I think that that's so amazing that Penelope was able to keep up the charade of Whistledown for 10 years without anybody catching on. Eloise says, I used to think so, but it's been 10 years more actually. If she was going to be caught, I think it would have happened already. And then Penelope says, eventually she'll make a mistake. She has to. She's only human, which we will get back to later in the book because Penelope does make a mistake and that's what gets her caught out. Also, another thing that is really cute too is I always forget that there are actually 4 Featherington sisters. There is not 3. So of course in the show there is Penelope, Prudence and Philippa, but in the books there is Prudence, Philippa, Penelope and Felicity. So there's actually 4 Featherington sisters, and I forget that in this, like, Portia, Lady Featherington, is like fluffing over Felicity because she wants Felicity to marry Colin because Colin's just come back from his travels and Felicity's just debuted or about to debut. One thing that I really love about Colin and about this whole story is that the reason that Colin goes traveling all the time and tries to get away and tries all these new things is because he feels like he has no purpose in life. Like, you know, his brother's the Viscount and his second brother is the Spare and he's like a painter and things like that, but Colin just feels like he has no purpose and no legacy, and that is why he always goes traveling, because he feels like he will stumble upon what his life purpose is going to be when he is traveling. It's one of the elements to this book that I love so much, because when Colin finds his purpose, we are literally 30 pages in this video and I'm gonna start crying. Guys, like, this book is just like, I love it so much. There's another book line that made it into the show. There is a scene in the book where they're at this ball and Penelope's eating an eclair and she's eating some and it drops on the floor and Colin says, I think you should put it in that potted plant over there to hide it. So she does, and he's like, oh, that's my mom's favorite plant. So anyway, it becomes this whole joke and whatever. She's like, you're very cheeky and blah, blah, blah. And she says the line, when you were a child, were you ever punished? One of my most favorite things about the book in particular is the relationship between Penelope and Lady Danbury, because in the show, you know, Lady Danbury had a heavy involvement with season 2 with the Sharmas, that they decided not to have it be a big part of season 3. But in the book, Penelope doesn't really have a good relationship with her mother and it's not really mended. She really does develop this really beautiful relationship with Lady Danbury, and we see a lot more of Penelope with Lady Danbury. There's a ball, and this sort of does happen differently in the book than in the show. Lady Danbury is sort of saying that the season is so boring and lackluster, and her, Colin and Pen are sort of talking, and she's like, you know what, I'm gonna spice the season up. I'm gonna offer £1,000 to the person who unmasks Lady Whistledown. So this comes from Lady Danbury and not the Queen. And anyway, they're going around in the circle and they're having a chat, and Lady Danbury says, who do you think it is, Penelope? And Penelope says, I think that it's you. She says, I like you, Penelope Featherington. I wager half the ballroom is of the same notion, but no one has the mettle to tell me so. And Penelope says, I really don't think either. She says something about like Lady Danbury giving her a look that is really maternal and that she doubts she would even have given to her own children. And Lady Danbury says this quote that I absolutely love, and it's, isn't it nice to discover that we're not exactly what we thought we were? And I think that's so special and so gorgeous. And it's definitely a tell that Penelope and Lady Danbury are probably 2 of the most intelligent women in the ton, and they understand each other. And it's another element to this book that I just love so much, is like the female friendships and relationships. I did forget to mention this because not a lot of people do know this, but because Lady Danbury and Penelope do have such a strong relationship, when Penelope and Colin have their first child, it is actually a girl, and they name her Agatha after Lady Danbury. So I was sort of sad that that wasn't really put in the show, but I will love it in the book nonetheless. I'm so excited. We're just about to read the first kiss, which I'm so excited to read the book version of again. What I love and how this sort of plays out in the book is that prior to this, there's obviously been a lot of debate amongst all the different characters in the story about who Lady Whistledown could be. You know, obviously Lady Danbury has her suspicions, and there's a huge scene like in the drawing room at the Bridgerton house where Hyacinth thinks it's this person and Lady Bridgerton thinks it's this, and blah, 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 blah. Colin has come to see Penelope at her house. He thinks that it's Eloise. And he is going to see Penelope because he goes, I don't know what to do, but I'm so confident that it's Eloise. One thing I also love about Colin so much, Colin is a huge foodie, and like every time he's like either gone to his mother's house or like anywhere, he's like, where's the food? He's like, I need to eat now. Like, it's more important than anything. And he's so stressed when he comes to Penelope's house, and he's literally like, where's the dang food? Like, where is your chef bringing me food? I need to eat. I need to stress eat. It's so funny. It's so good. So how the "would you kiss me" scene plays out in the book is, like I said, Colin's at her house. He thinks that Eloise is Whistledown, and basically he says, let me give you a hypothetical, right? He basically thinks that Eloise is going to be ruined by being Whistledown. He says, let me give you a hypothetical. Suppose I told people that I seduced you. Like, you would be ruined. It wouldn't even matter that we haven't kissed. Like, it would ruin you. And then he starts spiraling in his head and he's like, oh my gosh, like now I'm thinking about kissing, and now I'm thinking about kissing Penelope Featherington, and I've never thought about doing that before in my life. And then he's spiraling, and then she then sort of says, can I ask you a favor? He's like, call it male intuition, call it insanity. He knew what she was going to ask. And she says, would you kiss me, right at the end of this chapter? And then the first line after the Whistledown entry of chapter 9 is, his life as he knew it was over. All right, let's read this. I'm so excited. This dialogue was pulled directly from the book or the show, but basically she's like, actually forget it, forget that I asked. She says, no, I'm not going to forget it. I've spent my life forgetting things, not saying them, never telling anybody what I really want. It won't mean a thing, I promise you, it won't mean anything. And I'd never expect anything from you because of it, but I could die tomorrow. And he's like, what? And then he says a little bit more, and she says, I'm going to be an old maid at 9 and 20, I could die tomorrow. And he says, you're not going to die tomorrow. And she says, but I could, and it would kill me because, and he goes, you'd already be dead. Like, he's so unserious. But then he says, Colin could think of 100 reasons why kissing Penelope Featherington was a bad idea. The number one being that he actually wanted to kiss her, and it made him want her with an intensity that nearly buckled his knees. This man, she was a siren, a goddess, and he wondered how on earth no one had ever noticed this before. This is one of my favorite quotes from the whole book. I'm gonna say that so many times. And so, on an otherwise unremarkable Friday afternoon in the heart of Mayfair, in a quiet drawing room on Mount Street, Colin Bridgerton kissed Penelope Featherington, and it was glorious. My Shayla. Like, you guys don't understand how much I love them, okay? Tell you what, you guys, I could just sit here and read this all night, but I do need to go downstairs and have some dinner, and I definitely need to wipe my face off and things like that. I'm now 10 chapters in, so I'm on page 172. This always happens when I read this book. I just fly through it. It's so addictive, so I'm trying to like pace myself. I will be back after I have some dinner. Hello, my beautiful besties. It is a couple of days later. I think I spoke to you guys last on Friday night. It is now Sunday afternoon. My video is currently exporting now, so whilst I wait for that and then upload it, I thought I would read some more of Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. As you can see, giant smile on my face. I am excited to read. I can tell my motivation's coming back, which is nice. So let's jump back into it and let's just see how Colin and Pen are both dealing with that. It's really interesting, I guess, reading how things did go a bit differently in the book. So in the book, Cressida Cowper, in the book, her name's Cressida Twomley because she actually is married in the books. But they're at a ball and she says, I'm Lady Whistledown, and she like beelines it over to Lady Danbury and she's like, hey, can I have my money? I've like unmasked myself now. Lady Danbury is standing next to Penelope and Colin and she says, Penelope, what do you think? Do you think that Cressida is Lady Whistledown? And Colin was sort of like getting his point of view and his perspective, and he's sort of watching her and he can see that she hates being the center of attention. And he says something really interesting because he thinks that she's miserable. He says like, Miss Featherington, you look unwell, would you like to leave? She says yes, but then something strange happened. She changed. He didn't know how else to describe it. She simply changed right there in the ballroom by his side. Penelope Featherington became someone else. And I think it's so interesting to see how he can observe her persona switches, how she is so quiet and timid in herself being Penelope, but she actually can find this confidence in herself when she remembers who she is. And in this moment, she's like, this woman is not Lady Whistledown. Like, she's thinking this in her head. This woman who's claiming to be Whistledown is not Lady Whistledown. I am Lady Whistledown. She sort of says something that does get put into the show where she says, I have something to say. I've always liked Lady Whistledown and it would break my heart if she turned out to be someone like Lady Twomley, Cressida. So yeah, I think it's really interesting seeing how he does notice, before he even knows that she's Whistledown, he does notice these two versions of Penelope. Okay guys, I'm so excited because we're just about to read the Whistledown reveal for Colin, which in the book happens very different to how he finds out if you've seen the show. So I'm just about to read it and I'm so excited. I really like how it was done in the book. It is so good, you guys. So as you can see, I am only halfway through the book, which is obviously quite an early reveal. So basically how this happens, Colin is out one day and he sees Penelope, this is like during the day, he sees her get into like a hired hack or something. And he's like, that's odd. Like, why is she getting into a carriage on her own? And he ends up seeing her do that. So he gets in his own carriage and he follows her. He sees her sort of go into like Bloomsbury and like way out of town. And he sees her pull up outside of a church and go inside. So he like very quietly follows her inside the church. He sees her like counting all the pews for some reason, and she ends up sitting down in a pew, takes a little envelope out of her bag and puts it into one of the Bibles that's like sitting on one of the church pews. Now he sees her do that, she stands up and he moves out of the shadows and he's like, haha, I have found you. What are you doing here? She's saying how it's like the church for the writers and he's a writer and stuff like that. And he says, I believe I'm developing a taste for prayer. And she's like, prayer, you? And he's like, oh yes. He's like, I'm in a church, I believe I want to pray. And she's like, I beg your pardon. This is one of my favorite quotes. She says, I didn't think you were a particularly religious person. He said, I'm not. I intend to pray for you. And she says, me? He's like, because by the time I'm done, prayer is the only thing that is going to save you. He then dashes into the church pew and he rips out the envelope that's inside the Bible, which is so good. Oh my God. How fitting that I'm wearing my carriage scene sweater right now, because guess what time it is? It's so interesting and cool that in the book, the Lady Whistledown reveal and the carriage scene happen right after each other. So it is different to the show, that if you've seen the show, how this starts here is that, you know, I said that he followed her into a church. She had her own little hired carriage or hack. Basically, when she goes out of the church, hack's taken off. She's got no way to get home. So he basically is like, get in the carriage, take the long way home. And he's basically so angry with her. He's furious that it's her, and he literally just like can't believe that it's her. So when I read this version of the carriage scene, I wish so badly, like I love the carriage scene that we got, but I wish so badly that we got this, because he's basically furious at her, right? And if you know the story, you know that the root of Colin's anger, one, a little bit comes from, you know, him feeling like he fully thought he knew her and he doesn't. So there's frustration there. But the root of his anger towards her is that she's successful, right? Like he wants to be a writer and he feels like he has no purpose in any part of his life, but she's got this whole thing. So his anger really is rooted in jealousy. He just doesn't really know that yet. So anyways, they're having this huge argument in the carriage about Whistledown, and she's basically saying like, we have to stop speaking like children. She's like, what do you think you're doing? And he's like, being an adult, one of us has to be. She goes, don't you dare speak to me of adult behavior, you who runs at the hint of responsibility. He says, what does that mean? She's like, I thought it was rather obvious. He says, I can't believe you're speaking to me like this. And she says, you can't believe I'm doing it, or that I possess the nerve to do so. She says, there's more to me than you think, Colin. There's more to me than even I used to think. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So that's why I love this version of, I don't know, the carriage scene. And then they obviously like start smooching and everything. And one of my favorite quotes is, she had been born for this man and she'd spent so many years trying to accept the fact that he'd been born for someone else. To be proven wrong was the most exquisite pleasure imaginable. Literally crying in the club. Let's read this. Sorry, there's one more thing I have to say. I've just noticed that I highlighted something that is so cringe. There is a moment where, and she does it in the show too, where she like runs her fingers through his hair. And in the show, it's this very great moment and he looks like in awe of her. But in the book, she starts laughing and he's like, why are you laughing? Like, come on, you have to tell me now why you're laughing. She says that his hair feels like Eloise's hair. And I'm like, why would you say that? I love that all this dialogue was also in the show. They actually pull up at Featherington House, had it kissy kissy smooch, and he's done some other stuff to her. She says, oh God, can't we just ask the driver to keep driving, like keep going around? And he's like, what's the possibility your mother wouldn't have noticed my carriage in front of your house yet? He's like, very well then, make yourself presentable. Now this is where it happens a little bit differently. He says, make yourself presentable. She's like, I can just race up to my room. No one will see me. Anyway, and he's asking her, he's like, do I look okay? Do I look okay? And then he like hops out of the carriage. She hops out of the carriage and she's like, oh, you're coming into my house as well. Like, what's that about? He's like, of course. And then of course he says, for God's sake, Penelope, are you going to marry me or not? And then Penelope proceeds to fall out of the carriage. Like, it literally says she hit the pavement. This is another one of my favorite scenes. So obviously after, you know, Colin has ruined Penelope's virtue in the carriage, right? He basically is like, all right, we're going inside and I'm going to speak to your mother because obviously we have to get married now. So he goes inside, and this is one of my favorite scenes because it's so funny because he's obviously gone into the house to speak to Lady Featherington to ask for Penelope's hand. However, both of them have rocked up at the wrong time because at the moment it's like family night at the Featherington house. So all of these relatives are over. So when Colin comes in with Penelope, he's like, I need to speak with you, Lady Featherington. I need to ask you for your daughter's hand. And literally Lady Featherington starts squawking, and she's so excited because she thinks that he's talking about Felicity. Even though Penelope is standing right next to him, she's like screaming at Felicity to like go and get her watercolors and like come and impress him and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's kind of sad how she is so overlooked. Like her mother is sort of like, oh, like, are you hungry, Mr. Bridgerton? Like, I'll ring for someone to get you food. Or Penelope can go and get you food. You don't mind, do you, Penelope? And he's like, I mind. Like, do you not see what I'm trying to do here? Okay. It's starting. I literally think I have a note in here that said, Colin, my wife Bridgerton has arrived. Because in the books, he's just sort of known as Colin, my wife Bridgerton, because in the books, I should keep a tally actually. Maybe from now on for the rest of the book, I'm gonna make a tally of every time, even before they're married, that he calls her his wife. I am so emotional. It's so cool when you go back and you reread books that are so sentimental to you, because sometimes you forget what's sort of going to happen even though you think you know. You like remember all these lines that are just so like special and resonate with you for different reasons. And I just got to this one line, and it's like not a big love declaration, but it means so much to me. And like, I just remember so desperately that when the show was coming out, there were certain moments that I like obviously wanted to see in the show so badly, but I wanted this one exchange to happen. It's in the Bridgerton drawing room, and Penelope was having a conversation with Eloise, and then Colin came in, she saw them flirting, she's like, I'm gonna dip. Anyway, then they have a little rendezvous on the couch, not all the way. Funnily enough, he says, I can't do the deed with you for the first time in the middle of the day on a couch, which show Colin says hot psych to. He basically like sort of stops it and he says like, when we do this, I want it to be right and at least in a bed, whatever. Anyway, and he starts like fixing her up, and she says, do I look a mess? Do I look a mess? She asked. He nodded. But you're my mess. It's so sick. It's so sick and twisted. Okay, so we are just about to get to the infamous mirror scene. They're at their engagement ball, and what ends up happening is Penelope's like issue of Lady Whistledown was supposed to come out on a Monday, but her publishers accidentally published it on a Saturday on the night of their engagement ball. And basically prior to this, Colin and Penelope decided that she wasn't going to do Whistledown anymore. So he's furious, and essentially he has taken her up to his bedroom, and they're having another fight, another massive fight. He says, you want to be found out? She says, no, of course not, but this is my life's work. This is my life's work. This is all I have to show for my life, and if I can't take credit for it, I'll be damned if I let someone else will. So she still doesn't want Cressida taking the blame. And Colin says, Colin opened his mouth to offer a retort, but to his surprise, he had nothing to say. Life's work. Penelope had a life's work. He did not. She might not be able to put her name on her work, but when she was alone in her room, she could look back at her issues and point to them and say to herself, this is it. This is what my life has been about. She was amazing. And he was, dear God above, he was jealous of her. So that's like such an important thing for their relationship. And like I said, why he was so angry at her about Whistledown. This of course leads into the mirror scene. And if you know, you know, so let's keep reading. There is something else that I wanted to mention, because there is a moment prior to this where like, or basically in the book, Colin doesn't know if he loves Penelope because he's never been in love before, and he doesn't know what love feels like. So he goes and speaks to his sister Daphne, and she's no help because she says love feels differently to everybody. And it's in this moment that he realizes, like I said, he just realized how amazing she is. He said that is when he realized that Daphne had been right. His love hadn't been a thunderbolt from the sky. It had started with a smile, a word, a teasing glance. Every second he had spent in her presence, it had grown until suddenly he reached this moment and he suddenly knew he loved her. This is the most crazy thing a man has ever said. So Again, I'm going to talk about the show, but for those who have not seen the TV show, the whole, like, I feel like the biggest scene that everyone wanted in the show and that people remember from the show is the mirror scene, okay? And when they were like in production, everyone was like, is the mirror scene going to be, is the mirror scene going to be in it? Now, in the book, there is no like direct, they do anything in front of a mirror. This is where the entire mirror scene thing came from again. And it makes me feral. This one little line of dialogue is where the entire mirror scene, they call this scene a mirror scene even though it doesn't happen in front of a mirror. They're like undressed and whatever. He says to her, I think that they're in the mirror looking into a mirror or something, and he says, I want to my man says, I want to see you sitting up so I can see them full and lovely and large. And then I want to crawl behind you and cup you. And I want to do it in front of a mirror. That's where the whole thing came from, is him literally just saying, and I want to do it in front of a mirror. Nothing happens in front of a mirror. In the show, they definitely made a bigger deal of the mirror and him like undressing her in front of the mirror and all of that stuff and saying all these beautiful things in front of the mirror. The one thing I love about this scene, it's like them obviously being intimate for the first time together. It's truly like both of them have finally seen each other without the rose-colored glasses. Like Penelope's always had Colin on this pedestal and she has finally realized that she has made him out to be this man that he is not. He is imperfect. He has a temper. He's finally seeing that she is not this innocent, sweet girl that she once was, and it's both of them just sort of being vulnerable and open with each other. And if you've seen the show, when I heard that they were going to be using Point of View by Ariana Grande in this scene, I lost my mind, because not in my wildest fantasies had I ever thought that they would use Point of View by Ariana Grande. I'd love to see me from your point of view. For this scene is so poignant and so beautiful, and I just could cry about it, honestly. I had to take a break after the mirror scene because it really gets me. It's a lot more emotional in the book than in the show. Good morning, everybody. It is the next day. I'm hoping today will be the day we finish Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. I'm loving this. I've just been so busy. I just wish I could sit and binge. I have to say something really funny. I've just obviously just started the page. Colin is basically saying like it wasn't very difficult to get the wedding date pushed forward because obviously they were like intimate with each other. Probably a better idea that they get married sooner rather than later. And he goes, of course, it was highly unlikely that she would become pregnant after only one encounter. And I'm going, show Colin is looking at book Colin and is going, psych! This is the afternoon snack of champions, not of a dog, okay? Hello you guys, I'm back from the physio. I am now going to sit out here and hopefully finish as much of Romancing Mr. Bridgerton as I can. I do have an appropriate shirt because you guys will see throughout the week, I actually do have quite a lot of like merch to match my favorite books, so I'll try to wear them when I'm reading those certain books. Hello guys, I had to move upstairs because it started to get way too hot and way too sunny outside, so I was like, yeah, no, I'm coming back inside. I thought for the finale of our reading of this, I'd put on my final Bridgerton shirt that you guys haven't seen yet, and it is Colin and Penelope from the show. So if you guys remember earlier, I was talking about how Eloise and Penelope were talking earlier in the book about how Whistledown has been running for 10 years and she's surprised that no one's, you know, figured her out yet. I think Eloise says like, she's been going for 10 years, surely she would have slipped up by now and made a mistake. Like surely she would have made a mistake. And remember how I said to keep like an eye on that for later on? In the back end of the book, basically Lady Twomley comes to Penelope's house, who is Cressida Cowper. She's like the mean girl in the ton. Basically she confronts Penelope and she says that, you know, she's actually a lot smarter than a lot of people think she is and that she never forgets an insult. And she remembers that at one of the earlier balls, she heard Penelope say that it would break her heart if Lady Whistledown turned out to be somebody like Cressida. And then a week later, Lady Whistledown, Penelope, published a Whistledown saying, ladies and gentlemen, this author is not Lady Cressida Twomley. She is nothing more than a scheming imposter, and it would break my heart to see my years of hard work attributed to one such as her. Penelope did eventually slip up and Cressida figured it out, and essentially she has blackmailed Penelope now into either giving her £10,000 or she's going to tell everybody that she is Lady Whistledown. So guys, this love declaration, confession, whatever you want to call it, is my favorite love declaration of all time. It is on that grey sweater that I was wearing earlier, and I think like if you were to ever ask me like what is my favorite like love declaration or confession from a book, like what is your favorite one ever, I will tell you that it's this one. Basically what's happened is Colin's come home and realized that Penelope's had this conversation with Cressida. She's having a breakdown, she doesn't know what to do, and Colin says, leave it to me, I've got a plan, we're gonna do something. And she's like, can't you just stay here with me? He's like, just stay here, don't go to Lady Danbury, don't go to anybody, I'm gonna fix this. And she's like, why can't you just think here with me? And he crosses to her and he takes her face in his hands and he says, I love you. I love you with everything I am, everything I've been, and everything I hope to be. I love you with my past, and I love you for my future. I love you for the children we'll have and for the years we'll have together. I love you for every one of my smiles, and even more for every one of your smiles. And listen, I love the love confession in the show. It's beautiful, but I will mourn the loss of hearing Luke Newton say this every day for the rest of my life. It's just very special to me. So guys, it's all coming to a head. We're in the last couple of pages, I think, of the book. And essentially what Colin has decided to do is that at his sister Daphne's big ball at the end of the season, he is going to make an announcement and he is going to tell the ton that his wife is Lady Whistledown. And Penelope says, don't do it. And he's thinking the whole time that she doesn't want her identity to be known, but she then says to him, she says, Colin, if you tell the world that I'm Lady Whistledown, they will react the way we think they will and you'll never see your journals published. And he says his heart stood still because that is when he finally understood her. All this time, she'd been begging him not to make the announcement. It had all been for him. And she says, I could never forgive myself. I don't want to destroy your dreams. And he says, they were never my dreams until I met you. She says, you don't want to publish your journals? You were just doing it for me? He said, no, I do want to do it. It is my dream, but it's a dream you gave me. And she says, no, that doesn't mean I can take it away. And he says, you're not. And getting my work published, well, it doesn't hold a candle to my real dream, which is spending the rest of my life with you. This man. All right, let's buckle up for the reveal. This is my favorite. Now, from my memory, I feel like he drops a lot of my wife's and things like that throughout this speech. So essentially what happens here is Colin opens a door. He's basically like taken her into this hallway. They're having a conversation and then he ends up opening this door and this door leads out onto a balcony that basically looks over the whole ballroom, right? So he's taken her out there. I think there's like 2 flutes of champagne or whatever. So him and Penelope are standing on a balcony and they start to address the ton. So I'm going to put a my wife counter on the screen. So he says, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to propose a toast to the most remarkable woman in the world. He says, I'm a newlywed and therefore you are all required to indulge me in my lovesick ways. He says, I know that many of you were surprised when I asked Penelope Featherington to be my wife. I was surprised myself. I wasn't surprised that I'd fallen in love with her, but rather that it had taken so long. I've known her for many years, you see, and somehow I'd never taken the time to look inside to see the beautiful, brilliant, witty woman she'd become. Therefore, with all of you here as my witness, I would like to say, Penelope, I love you, I adore you, I worship the ground you walk upon, to my wife. Okay, so we've already got 2, and then they have some champagne and whatever. He says, we're leaving the party early right now, as a matter of fact. I'm sure you'll all understand. And then everyone sort of snickers and carries on. And he says, but before I do, I have one little thing to say. One last little thing in case you don't believe me when I tell you that my wife is the wittiest, cleverest, most enchanting woman in all of London. Cressida at this point is Rohul. She's like, no! He continues on to say, you might say that my wife has 2 maiden names. Of course, we all knew her as Penelope Featherington, as did I, but what you didn't know, and what not even I was clever enough to figure out until she told me herself, is that she is also the brilliant, the witty, the breathtakingly magnificent. Oh, you all know who I'm talking about. And he says, I give you my wife, his love and pride flowing across the room, Lady Whistledown. The room is dead silent, right? The room's dead silent. And then it says, then it came, clap, clap, clap. Slow and methodical, with such force and determination that everyone had to turn and look to see who had dared break the shocking silence. It was Lady Danbury. And then someone else began to clap. Penelope jerked her head to the side to see who, Anthony Bridgerton, and then Simon Basset, the Duke of Hastings, and then the Bridgerton women and the Featherington women, and then another and more until the entire room was cheering, and Penelope couldn't believe it. Tonight, all they could do was admire and cheer. For a woman who had to carry out all of her accomplishments in secret, it was everything she'd ever dreamed of. That's one of my favorite parts from the book, is that like she thinks the worst. She thinks they're absolutely gonna like ridicule and bash her and say that she's this awful woman. The fact that like it's Lady Danbury that just starts clapping, and then Anthony, and then the Duke, and then the whole room just like erupts into this like applause for her. I talk a lot about how Penelope is one of my favorite characters, and like that she just means so much to me, and like I just relate to her on such a deep level, and seeing her get like everything that she's ever wanted is so rewarding. It really does just get me. And as much as I love Colin, and I love the romance, and I love the relationship, she's just such a special character to me, because she's this very successful businesswoman who is unafraid of standing her ground and saying, no, I've worked hard for what I've got, and I'm not ashamed of that, and I don't want it to just be tossed to the side. Okay guys, I have finished my first reread. You guys pretty much got my thoughts in that last little section there, but just to tell you how the book ends, because you know this is a full spoiler vlog. Essentially we have a little epilogue where we have a bit of a time jump where we see Penelope and Colin in their office, like in their house. Colin walks in and says there's been a delivery, and his novel, or his book, his like travel journal has been published, and it's called An Englishman in Italy by Colin Bridgerton. In the show it's called Traveling with Myself, which is so lame. Penelope is pregnant, and she basically is working on something. He's like, what are you working on? And she tells him that she is starting to work on a novel, and the novel is going to be called The Wallflower. This is always a 5-star, infinity star book for me, and I think I give these like 2 chili spices, I want to say. They're not very descriptive spicy scenes, but you get enough, you know what I mean? And if you don't get enough, stream Bridgerton season 3 on Netflix. Okay, so because it's about like 3:30 in the afternoon, I do want to take a break. I need to do some content planning for the week, just to plan like my TikToks and things like that this afternoon. But the next book that we're going to start with when we get back from doing that is going to be Red, White and Royal Blue. Now, as you guys can see here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 copies of this book, because it is probably my favorite book aside from Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. I was going to start with this edition here, but when the movie came out, obviously movie tie-in cover came in, and when I bought it, I ended up annotating it before watching the movie because I wanted to do like a full annotated copy. So I think this might be the copy that I read, because it is just fully annotated all the way through, and it will help me remember certain things that I want to talk to you guys about, obviously whilst I read it. Good morning guys, it is the next day. It is about 20 to 11. I do have to do a little bit of work in about half an hour, but I thought I would obviously jump on and start reading Red, White and Royal Blue, which is what we were talking about yesterday. So essentially, for those who haven't heard of this book before, this book follows Alex and Henry. So Alex is the first son of the United States. It's essentially in this like alternate make-believe timeline where essentially like a Hillary Clinton type woman president won the election, I want to say. And then you have Henry, who is the Prince of Wales. And essentially what ends up happening between these two here is they are both invited to a royal wedding, and they basically have a history of just like not getting along. I think they met at an Olympics. Ever since then, they have been like rivals. They don't like each other. So at this wedding, this rivalry sort of comes to a head when the two of them get into a physical altercation and they destroy a $75,000 wedding cake. Let's read a little bit of this now, and then hopefully I can take you guys outside today and do some sunbathing and read out there for a bit. One of the things, aside from like obviously the humor in these books, is I just love the banter. The banter is done so well and authentically, and like obviously for these two guys that obviously do become like lovers, like the actual initial like friendship, like can't stand each other banter is so good, because I've just read this little bit here where like we get a bit of backstory that Alex sort of says the first time he actually did hear of Prince Henry and see Prince Henry was his sister June had this little like, you know, those magazines that used to get as kids, and in the middle they would have all those posters that you could like pull the staples out and put them on your walls. He saw that she had one of Prince Henry in there. At this point in time, by the way, Alex thinks he's straight. Like he's always had just like straight relationships. But when he was 12, he'd always sneak into his sister's room and look at the photo of Prince Henry. And he's like, oh, I'd always wondered what it'd be like to meet him. And then when they did meet each other at the Olympics, obviously, like, they both just like didn't get off on the right foot. The banter is so good. Like, Alex is drunk at this wedding. He sees Prince Henry standing by the cake and like this champagne thing. And Alex is like, you know, when you have one of these, you should do 2 champagne fountains instead of 1. It's really embarrassing to be at a wedding with only 1 champagne fountain. And Henry says, Alex, I wondered if I had to have the pleasure. And Alex goes, looks like it's your lucky day. And Henry goes, truly a momentous occasion. Like, they just have this like easy back and forth, and like there's a little bit more. Alex is like, am I offending you? Sorry, I'm not obsessed with you like everyone else. I know that must be confusing for you. And Henry's like, do you know what? I think you are. It's just so good. You guys, I am literally so sad because I went out there to obviously have a change of scenery and everything, and I thought I was going to vlog out there with you guys, but then my next door neighbors were just mowing for the entire like hour and a half that I was outside. There was one bit that I wanted to like talk to you guys about because it is literally hilarious, and I was talking about, I guess, like the humor of this book a little bit earlier. Alex and Henry have destroyed the wedding cake. Their teams have both said, okay, you guys need to meet up in England and spend like a couple of days together and post that you're best friends and you're doing all these charity events and blah, 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 blah together. It says that they're walking past like photographers and things like that. It says a blue-haired girl in the crowd flips up a homemade poster that reads in big glittery letters, "Get in me, Prince Henry," for about 5 seconds until a member of the security team shoves it into a nearby trash can. Such a clever book. I love it so much. Guys, I had to jump back on because one, we just got to literally one of my favorite scenes in the whole book, but also I finally put on my History Ha t-shirt, which I think you can see better now. It says History Ha. I definitely bought this shirt when the movie came out. Anyways, we just got to one of my favorite scenes. Basically, it's Thanksgiving at the White House and Alex has just found out what they do to the turkeys like for Thanksgiving. So basically, Alex has just found out that his mother, or like the White House, every year for Thanksgiving, they like, when they buy the turkeys to eat before they, apparently they like stay in a luxury suite on the taxpayer's dime, and Alex is so furious about it. He's like, you can't do that. And his mother's like, Alex, I'm so sorry. It's already happening. They're already on their way to like stay in this nice little suite. And he's like, no, we can't do that. Like, put them in my room. She's like, Alex, I'm not putting the turkeys in your room. He's like, put them in my room. He's like, put them in my room, put them in my room, put them in my room. And it says, that night, as Alex stared into the cold, pitless eyes of a prehistoric beast of prey, he now has a few regrets. He texts Henry about the turkeys and he's like, they know I've robbed them of 5-star accommodations to sit in a cage in my room, and the minute I turn my back, they're going to feast on my flesh. It's one of my favorite like crash outs. Alex is such a relatable character to me. He is just so chaotic. One of my favorite parts of the book is, and I kid you not, it is called the legendary Balls Out Bananas White House Tree. I can't even say it right. Every year at the White House, Alex and his sister June and his best friend Nora, they're infamously known as like the White House Trio. They throw a massive New Year's Eve party, which they call in the book our legendary Balls Out Bananas White House Trio New Year's Eve party. So just keep that in mind. Anyways, so Henry flies in with his best friend Pears. Alex and Henry have sort of had a couple of drinks. They're on the dance floor and Alex is like, have you not danced before? Henry's like, oh, just like the little, you know, the waltzes and stuff they teach you. You guys will see as we read the book, music plays a massive role in this story. There are so many like very famous popular songs that are like introduced at key moments of the story. Anyways, it says that the song crossfades into another doom, doom, da, dum, da, da, dum, doom. If you didn't get that from my amazing beatboxing, that was the masterpiece Get Low by Lil Jon. And it is just so funny. Alex is literally mid-sentence. He hears the song start and he's like, shut up, everybody shut up, shut up. This is my song. He's like, this is my song. Let's get on the dance floor right now. And he's like rounding up the girls. He's like, girls, we gotta dance. Henry, having never heard this song before, is like, did that man just say sweat drop down my balls? You know, till the sweat drops down my balls. Like, come on, you guys know the song. If you haven't, pause this video, look up the song, listen to it. Once you experience it, come back. One of the really great aspects of this book as well is that once Alex and Henry sort of start seeing each other, they start sending each other emails because they think it's probably the safest form of communication outside of like phone calls and texts and things like that, just for safety reasons. And if you have read the book, you know, I guess, what ends up happening with these emails. But at this point in time, they think that it's the safest place to communicate. But the funniest thing about these emails make me laugh so much because the way they address each other, like when they type out their emails, Alex says, His Royal Highness Prince Henry of whatever, and he signs it off, Alex, first son of your former colony. They are just so funny. Casey McQuiston is just so good at writing humor that is not forced, and it is just effortlessly funny. Like, they are so clever. I love it. The one thing that I always sort of say about this book when I recommend it is that I can see the scenes in this book so vividly, and when I read this book I feel like I'm sitting next to them when they're out doing these things and having fun. Basically, there's one weekend where Alex, Henry, his sister Nora, and Henry's sister Bea and his best friend Pez all go out to a fundraiser, which then leads to them getting into a limousine where Henry's best friend Pez has made them all these like embroidered matching kimonos all in different colors, and they all have these funny sayings on the back, and like Henry's has Prince Buttercup on the back, and they go out to a karaoke bar and they just get absolutely sloshed, like so smashed and so drunk. Henry's like, I'm not doing karaoke, I'm not doing it, which then leads to him 30 minutes later screaming Don't Stop Me Now by Queen, playing karaoke. But I just want you guys to see this one little passage that when I just read it then I went, this is why this is my favorite book in the whole world, because Henry is singing the song and he's knee sliding across the stage. It says, not when the Prince of England is knee sliding across the stage playing passionate and somewhat erotic air guitar. Nora has produced a bottle of champagne and starts spraying Henry with it, and Alex loses his mind laughing, climbs on top of his seat and wolf whistles. Bea is absolutely beside herself, tears streaming down her face, and Pez actually is on top of the table now. June is dancing beside him with bright fuchsia lipstick of hers smeared in his platinum hair. You're there and you can see these people having so much fun who just love each other and have the best time. I just love it so much. I literally can't stop laughing over this one bit, so I had to just like tell you guys about it. It's a random line, but it's just made me laugh so hard. There's like an invitation that comes from Buckingham Palace to the White House. It says, the chairman and commitment of management of the Champions request the pleasure of the company of Alexander Claremont Diaz in the Royal Box on the 6th of July 2020. Alex takes a picture and sends it to Henry. 1, the F is this, aren't there poor people in your country? And 2, I've already been in the Royal Box. I've already been in the Royal Box, Alex. This is another one of my favorite scenes, and this is probably my actual, I think it's my favorite scene that they adapted into the movie. It's the scene where Zara finds out about Alex and Henry, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but Zara is essentially like, I think it's his mum's like secretary slash like she's sort of in charge of making sure that Alex and his sister June like stay in line and don't do anything stupid. Alex and Henry just spent the night together. No one knows about them except for their friends, so none of the staff really know exactly. They sort of have an idea, but anyways, she basically is like, Alex, get up, you got a meeting at 7 o'clock. I don't care if you're naked, I am coming in there, I have a key. And him and Henry just like quickly woken up like, oh my God. He tells Henry to get into a closet. And Henry's like, quiet. And he goes, yes, we can unpack the ironic symbolism later. Just get in the closet. Zara bursts into the room and she sees obviously that he's half undressed and that there's like sheets all over the floor. She's like, who is she? Alex is like, no one knows. And he's like, you let her bring her phone in here? Like, who is she? Where is she? I know you have a girl in here. Then like, as they're in the middle of arguing, Henry quite literally like falls out of the closet, like trying to get dressed. Zara has a full mental breakdown and she's literally losing her mind. She's like, how long has this been going on for? And he says 7 months, like since New Year's. So she's like, this has been going on for 7 months? Oh my God, I thought you were getting into international relations or something. He goes, I mean, technically. And she goes, if you finish that sentence, I'm gonna spend tonight in jail. Literally one of my favorite scenes, and it's just done so well. Good morning, you guys. It is the next day. Guys, I'd love to show you. I've got a cup of coffee and I just have some Vegemite toast, and my dog is sitting next to me and he is crying so hard. I've literally given him food and put it in his bowl. Does he want the dog food? No, he wants toast with Vegemite and butter. But anyways, yeah, I'm gonna eat my food and get right on into it. I just got to one of my favorite parts of this book. It's another lot of emails between Alex and Henry, and we've just got to this one lot of emails where Alex is sort of asking Henry if he's ever heard about Alexander Hamilton and John Lawrence. So like said that from reading their correspondence from back in the day, like he got a bit of a vibe from Alexander Hamilton, because he kept like signing his letters like affectionately yours and yours forever and things like that to John Lawrence. And Alex says, thinking about history makes me wonder how I'll fit into it one day, I guess. And you too. I kind of wish people still wrote like that. History, huh? Bet we could make some. That's like the quote from this book, and that's why that little shirt I was wearing yesterday with the history huh in a love heart is that. And then when Henry replies, Henry tells Alex this story, and this is one of my favorite things. Oh my god. He says, have you ever heard the story of the prince who was born with his heart on the outside of his body? And it literally makes me cry so much when I read it, because it is obviously symbolic of a prince who's in power, who obviously in the story nobody took seriously because they could see that he wears his heart on his sleeve and that he leads with his heart and sort of things like that. And that obviously like correlates to Prince Henry. There's this really great quote in here that I think I made a bookmark somewhere and I definitely put it on. And essentially what's happened is Alex invited Henry and Pez to his family's like lake house, which they go and spend with his dad. At the end of that weekend, Alex has obviously realized that he loves Henry and he takes him out into like the lake at night. Alex tries to tell Henry that he loves him. Henry can tell it's sort of coming, so he like ducks under the water, goes to bed, and then the following morning Alex wakes up and there's just a note on his bedside table that says like, I had to leave early, had some stuff, thanks for everything. And then he hasn't heard from Henry in like a week or something like that. Remember how I was saying that they all got those kimonos when they did karaoke together? Finds a note in his little pocket that says, Dear Thisbe, I wish there weren't a wall, love Pyramus. And when Alex researches what that is, he finds out that Pyramus and Thisbe were two like lovers in Greek mythology that were from two, it's sort of like a Romeo and Juliet sort of thing, like, you know, children of rival families forbidden to be together, it says. And it says the only way they could speak to each other was through a thin crack in the wall built between them. This is the part of the book where I just start to get super emotional. So just to catch you guys up, what basically has happened is Alex has gone and confronted Henry in England. He's basically said like, why did you ghost me, blah, 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 blah. And they have this huge confrontation and they both say that they love each other and they decide to just give it a crack. Obviously they are giving it a crack, but they say, no, this is forever. This is what we want. Next day, they're out on the tarmac. Alex is flying back to the States. Henry says, listen, I want you to know, I'm sure, I'm 1000% sure. And it says he removes his hand and there sitting in the center of Alex's calloused palm is the signet ring. Basically, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but Alex always wears this key around his neck and it's the key to his family's home in Texas. So before, obviously, him and his parents moved out to be in the White House when his mum won, he has the key to his sort of family home. So he always remembers who he is and where he sort of came from. So in this moment, Henry gives him his signet ring. Alex ends up taking the ring and sliding it onto his chain with his necklace so that he has the key and the ring. He says they clink together gently as he tucks them both beneath his shirt, two homes side by side. And now I'm scared because we've got more emails and the emails ruin me. Oh god, guys, the emails, I keep telling you, the emails absolutely ruin me. Henry is writing to Alex and he sort of says like, I never actually told you what I thought the first time that we met. And he sort of goes back. He says, I thought this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen, talking about Alex, and I had better keep it a safe distance away from me. I thought if somebody ever loved me like that, it would set me on fire. And then I was a careless fool and I fell in love with you anyway. And then inexplicably, you had the absolute audacity to love me back. Can you believe it? This is probably my most highlighted page in this whole book. This is Alex's incomplete list of things that he loves about His Royal Highness Prince Henry of Wales, and it literally ruins me. There's this final email, like exchange between the two. Spoiler alert, yes, it's just before the emails get leaked. So the very next page is literally an article saying photos reveal romantic relationship between Prince Henry and Alex Claremont Diaz. And sorry, I just read, there's a headline title that says, Don't let the first sun go down on me. Which is genius. It's a play on Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me by Elton John. What I was trying to say when I started this video crying is this last little email exchange before they get sort of caught and get hacked, the emails get hacked. Alex is sort of, he's had a few glasses of whiskey, but he starts talking about this little thing that Henry does with his mouth. And he sort of says, you know, it pinches when you're worried and you're afraid or you're forgetting something. Then he starts to say, but now I've memorized it. Topography on the map of you, a world I'm still charting. It's what you do when you're trying to not give yourself away. I mean the truth of you, the weird perfect shape of your heart and the one on the outside of your chest. No, they're talking about this, the prince with the heart on the outside of his chest. And the only thing that Henry sends back to this, and it's the last email, is a passage, it's a quotation that says, thank you from the bottom of my heart for having saved me. I was drowning and you threw yourself into the water without hesitation, without a backwards look. I read this book probably like 4 times, and each time when we get to the election, I like burst into tears, the re-election, because I said that, you know, Alex's mom, who's the president, they're from Texas, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but earlier in the book when they're talking about the 2016 election, when she got elected, Texas did not turn blue. Like, she won, obviously. She won the majority, but her hometown, like, her home state, sorry, where she's from, didn't turn blue, because it never turns blue, right? And then after this whole thing blows up with Henry and it comes out that, you know, they've been seeing each other, Alex goes and does this huge speech and he says that, you know, he's my choice and I hope this doesn't like inflict your decision when it comes to re-election. Basically, they're like at the election and they're waiting and Texas is taking so long to be called. Like, they're waiting for Texas to be called and they're waiting for Texas to be called. It's so sad, and his mum's like, I need you to help me rewrite my speech in case of concession. Like, I need you to go out there and speak to them. Anyways, they keep waiting, they keep waiting, and then it says, they're like waiting, they're watching the screen, and it says, Texas is grey for 5 more seconds before flooding beautiful, beautiful, unmistakable Lake LBG blue. It's so good. It gets me every time. I don't know why. You guys, this is just quite literally my favorite book. I don't know if I mentioned this, but they are in Texas for the election. Basically, Alex takes Henry downtown and they're like riding bikes, going to Alex's house, the family, the childhood home, as I was saying, that he has the key for. And he's driving through the streets and Starship's Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now is like playing through the streets and there's fireworks in the sky. Anyway, he takes Alex to the front door and Alex says, hey, we won. Says Henry takes his hand, one corner of his mouth tugging gently upwards. Yeah, we won. Alex reaches down to the front of his dress shirt and finds the chain with his fingers, pulls it out carefully, the ring and the key. Under winter clouds, victorious, he unlocks the door. It's just so good. I'll always say this is my favorite book for a reason. I will love this book for the rest of my days. 5 stars. And I think when I read this, I gave it like a 1.5 chili because I was like, oh, it's sort of closed door, but it's literally not. These boys are banging like bunnies. So I think I have to give it like maybe like a 2.5 chili spice. Book number 2 down. I don't even know what's going to be next. Hello, hotties. It's a little bit later in the day. It's like 4:30. So I thought it would be time to start our next reread, which is going to be Twisted Games by Anna Huang. I'm so excited to read this one. For those who aren't aware, this is the 2nd book in the Twisted series. So this follows Reese and Bridget. So Bridget is a modern day princess and she ends up getting this bodyguard called Reese, who is very morally grey and is broody and is like ex-military. And essentially what happens with Bridget here is that she's like next in line for the throne, if that makes sense. So her brother's always been like training his whole life to sort of be the king. He then like out of the blue abdicates for love, which means that Bridget has a matter of months not only to like learn how to be queen, but also like tick off this bucket list she's got of things that she wants to do before, you know, she does become the queen and has to sort of like write her life away. So who better to help her with that bucket list other than her morally grey, broody bodyguard Reese. You guys guessed it. It is the next day. Hello besties, how are we? I thought I would give you guys a bit of an update because I obviously didn't read anything last night. So anyways, whilst I was out in the sun, I read and started a little bit of Twisted Games. I am 52 pages in and I wrote some notes, some things I wanted to talk to you guys about. The way the book opens, you know how people always talk about hooks, like authors using hooks to like draw you in? The first line of this book is literally, spank me master, spank me. And if you read that out of context and you hear this is like a bodyguard book, you think they're in the middle of doing the do. However, the thing saying spank me master, spank me is a parrot. I said to you guys obviously that Bridget is a modern day princess, but she has a real affinity with animals. Her mother really loved animals, so she actually volunteers at this like animal rescue shelter. So there is a parrot there that says those things, and that's literally the opening to the book. Basically, for those who haven't read Twisted Games, how the book sort of starts out is Bridget's current bodyguard Booth is finishing up his contract, so Bridget is going to be getting a new bodyguard who is ex-military, and his name is Reese. There's also another page I wanted to talk about, but there's this scene where basically because he is her bodyguard, her full-time bodyguard, he has to live with her, and she is like always trying to get him to like take off his shirt because he's always exercising, and he's like, I'm never doing that, blah blah blah. Like, he's very professional. Also forgot to mention there's a 10-year age gap. She's like reading this book and she's getting distracted by him. Like, he must have just worked out. He's got like his shirt is like sticking to him. He says, how's the book? And she's like, riveting. He says, it sure seems that way. By the way, princess, the book is upside down. So she's literally like reading this book. He's like, how's the book? She's like, it's great. Because obviously she's not paying attention to the book. This is so good. So I mentioned to you guys that Reese is obviously ex-military, and there's this basically this instance that does overlap with Twisted Love. If you have read Twisted Love, Ava and Bridget get kidnapped one night. They are actually aiming for Ava, but because Bridget is with her, they both get kidnapped. And basically, like, Bridget snuck out to this concert, right? Didn't tell Reese, and then they ended up getting kidnapped. So she finds out that he put a tracker in her phone, and they make this little pact that she says, promise me you'll take the chip out of my phone and I will do anything you want. So one of the first trial tasks that he makes her do is wear a bulletproof vest when they go shopping. And basically they're in this like change room in a clothing store, whatever. She gets stuck, like the bulletproof vest or something that she's trying on gets stuck. She's like, can you get one of the sales assistants? He's like, oh, they're all like tied up. Like, I'll just help you, whatever. He helps her out and he says that the bulletproof vest was just like a test and you passed it and blah, 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 blah. This is one of my favorite quotes. Bridget says, I hate when you do stuff like this. And Reese says, I'd rather you hate me alive than love me dead. When you think about the significance of that for Reese and like why he doesn't let people get close to him, he would rather be so hateful and like terrible to her so that she doesn't form an attachment to him, so that it's like if something were to ever happen to him, she would never feel the pain from loving him, and like vice versa. We are literally 58 pages in and man is spitting poetry. Just buckle up. Guys, I forgot to say, because he's got PTSD, his therapist, like from obviously being in the army and that, his secret little hobbies that he draws. Oh, I'm gonna cry. Guys, I'm literally, don't even look at me. Don't even look at me right now. Good morning, besties and friends. It is the next day. I'll be completely honest with you guys. I went out last night with a friend to have some dinner, and then when I came home, I just like watched TV and I was so tired. We are going to continue on with Twisted Games. I think we only got 100 pages in yesterday, so let's keep reading, and when I have updates for you guys, I will let you know. So I guess to just like catch you guys up to where we're at, basically her brother, I think I might have said this at the beginning, her brother was obviously in line to be the king, but basically their grandfather like had a bit of a health scare, which brought her back to Eldora, which is the like country that she's a princess in, and her brother tells her that he is getting married to his girlfriend who is a commoner, and there is a law in Eldora that, you know, you can only marry like nobility and like legitimate lines and things like that. So you can't marry a commoner. So he has decided to abdicate for love, which means Bridget is now in line and she is going to be the queen. She, at this point, like hadn't told Reese what was going on. The palace kept it really under wraps, which is funny for her bodyguard. But anyways, they go back to New York to just sort of wrap some things up before she moves back to Eldora, and she's out partying and she's with this like guy, and Reese just does not like it. At this point, you guys, it sounds strange. I know we're only like 150 pages in, but they have known each other for 3 years. I know we started with them meeting, but it has sort of been a bit of a time skip. He like takes her back home because she's acting like a brat and whatever, and then they get into this scenario where he like full spins her around, slams her to the door, and is like, you want me to take you, I will. But then she ends up like breaking down and saying that she's gonna be queen and blah blah blah, and she's like, I've only got 1 month left, and she goes, I've got this bucket list of things I want to do. She says, 1, I want to go somewhere where no one knows who I am. 2, I want to eat and read and sunbake all day without having to worry about an event later or waking up earlier the next day. 3, I want to do an adrenaline rush activity my grandfather will yell at me for, like bungee jumping. And 4, I want to have an orgasm that I didn't give myself. She ends up going to bed because she's drunk and whatever, and then he pulls out his laptop. He's like, oh, I'm gonna hate myself for this, and he starts planning their holiday. I am so obsessed with this man. Like, it is literally not funny. We're going to Costa Rica, baby. I'm so excited, guys. This book is literally everything to me. I'm so excited. You guys ever reread a book and you're like, I don't want it. I don't want it anymore. Like, I'm literally gonna cry. So like they've made it to Costa Rica, and he basically like got this beautiful villa from one of his mates who is in the army with or whatever, and they're staying there and they've had a beautiful day, and he takes her outside at night and shows her all the stars. And there is this scene, guys, that like comes back later in the end of the book, and it literally, like, when I read the line, I'm literally gonna cry. Like, I don't want it anymore. She looks up at the sky and everything, and she asks him, have you ever been in love? And he says, nope. She says, really, never? He goes, nope. Surprised? She says, a little. You're old. You should have been in love at least 3 times by now. And Reese says, 1 love for every decade. By that calculation, you should have been in love twice by now. So tell me, princess, have you ever been in love? And she says, no. I return my attentions to the stars, but I hope to be one day. This video is literally just me crying for like 40 to 50 minutes straight. That's all this video is. This book is so good. They're in the pool. It's their last night in Costa Rica. And Bridget's like, can you please come in the pool? Like, why wouldn't you come in the pool? Like, just come in the pool. He's like, you're gonna stop bugging me if I get in the pool? She's like, yes. So he gets in the pool. He takes his shirt off. And when he finally gets closer to her, she starts to realize that on his back, he just is like littered with scars. Like he has scars all across his back. And she thinks it's from being in the Navy and things like that. And then he says that his mum, trigger warning, sorry guys, his mum liked her belt. And then he basically tells a story about how her mum met this man and she, you know, he promised all these things that he was going to get her out of this terrible town and blah, blah, blah. She fell in love with him and she got pregnant. And when she told him, he just deserted them. She turned to like drugs and alcohol for comfort and she became a different person. And she blamed the kid for ruining her chances at happiness and took out her anger and frustration on him. And Bridget starts crying and this literally kills me. She says, it wasn't the boy's fault. I hope he knows that. And Reese says, he knows. Don't cry for him, princess. He's all right. But it's okay because they're about to get freaky deaky anyway, so let's just move on. I know these things are coming, but they just get me every time. It's her birthday and there's a gala. She's 24 now. She's just had like a really frustrating night with the Speaker of the House and everything. Everyone's doubting her, right? Because they want a male to like be the king. They don't want a queen. Takes her back to her room. He gives her a present for her birthday. He's like, it's nothing fancy, but I had it and I thought you might like it. She's like, you didn't have to get me anything. He says, it's not a big deal. And she unwraps it. She unrolls the paper and it's a drawing of her. It is a drawing of her in Costa Rica. There's two like spicy scenes in this that I think people remember the most. And the first one is the throne scene where basically she's like, I feel like going on a little tour of the throne room. So they go in there and he like sits her on the throne. She's like, I shouldn't be sitting on this. Like it's only reserved for the monarch. He's like, you're going to be it one day. And basically has a feast of her whilst she's sitting on the throne. It's so good. Reading back the crawling scene is so funny because it was the first time I'd ever read like a scene with crawling in it. So I remember reading it and I know that's what a lot of people associate with this book. And I just remember reading it and I was like, oh my God, because he pretty much makes her take everything off except for her heels and her gloves. Like she's wearing these long gloves. He basically is like, get on the floor and come here, but you gotta crawl. And I was literally, this man is everything. It's crazy, but it's also like not as intense as I remember it sort of being. I feel like I remember it being this huge, for some reason, because I read them so long ago, I thought the throne and the crawling were like the same scene, but they're not. So just to update you guys, because Bridget and Reese have been sneaking around, keeping their forbidden romance very under wraps, or supposedly. Bridget has this cousin called Andreas, I think his name is, and I can't remember exactly if it is him blackmailing them, but basically she gets an email from an anonymous person saying, you weren't careful enough, your highness, and it's a video of her and Reese in the library where they just had that little crawling scene. There's no audio or anything, but it's like fully them just doing the do. And she's sort of scared to tell Reese and he can tell something's wrong, but he's taken her out to this another gazebo, which is sort of like the little thing. She's like, why are we here? And he said, we never got to dance at the wedding because he's her bodyguard. And she's like, you don't like it when I dance. And he said, I love it when you dance, but only with me. She says, you don't dance. And he says, only with you. And then she says, careful, Mr. Larson, or I'll think you actually like me. And he says, baby, we are way beyond like. This is the part of the book where I've never been able to find another like forbidden love like this. Like I feel like it just culminates to this like feeling of like, you know, Rewrite the Stars from The Greatest Showman. That is what I think about when I think about this book. Guys, this is not a funny, silly, haha good time anymore. So basically, this is where I'm staying because I can't do this anymore. The press have found out that they were together and they had a big meeting about it, and Bridget said, I won't stop seeing him. I won't end my relationship with him. And whilst this meeting's happening, her grandfather collapses again and has a heart attack. And she is fully of the belief that it's because of her, because she stressed him out too much and ABCDEFG. So she goes to break things off with Reese. She sort of just says, she said, you don't get it. There is no happily ever after for us. We weren't a fairy tale. We were a forbidden love letter tucked into the back drawer and only retrieved in the darkness of night. We were the chapter of bliss before the climax hit and everything crumbled to ash. We were a story that was always meant to end. And then Reese says, do you remember Costa Rica? And she says, how could I forget? He said, you asked me if I'd ever been in love and I said no. And then he says, ask me again, princess. Why did I do this to myself? Like, why do I do this? Whose idea was this? Whose idea was it to do this video? I need answers because I can't do this. Remember how I kept saying that his mum was an alcoholic and a drug addict and whatever, so he never drank, he never abused and whatever. The minute Bridget breaks it off with him, Reese, chapter 41. My first taste of alcohol burned, so did the second, and by the time I made it through half a bottle of whiskey, however, it stopped burning and started numbing, which was the best I could have hoped for. I can't do this anymore. So we've just had a lovely visit from our good old friend Christian Harper, and if you guys have read the Twisted series, he is the MMC of Twisted Lies, which is the 4th book. Christian actually owns the company that deployed Reese. So Reese works for Christian. Whilst Reese is going through this episode, Christian comes and visits him, and he sort of says like, bro, this is pathetic. Like, we need to get you out of here. Your visa is about to expire anyway. And he's like, I'm not going. And then Christian says, well, I never thought I'd see the day Reese Larson in love. And then Reese's internal monologue says, I'd never been in love, never wanted to be in love. Hell, I didn't even know what love was. It was something I'd heard about, not experienced, until I met a woman who cracked my ironclad defenses like no one had before. Someone who saw all my scars and ugliness and still found me worthy, and somehow, some way, she'd filled the cracks in a soul I never thought would be whole again. I hate this book. I hate this. I hate it so much. We have just found out, I don't know if I mentioned this, we found out the identity of Reese's father, and it is Andreas's dad. So he is Bridget's cousin's stepbrother. So Bridget has come up with this plan to blackmail the Speaker of the House, Parliament House, whatever, into nullifying the marriage law. We keep coming back to do you remember in Costa Rica? He again says, in Costa Rica, you asked me if I'd ever been in love. I said no, ask me again. And she says, have you ever been in love, Mr. Larson? And he says, only once. And you, princess, have you ever been in love? And she says, only once. And then he says, until Bridget, I'd never loved or been loved, and I finally understood what the fuss was about. It was better than any bulletproof armor or oblivion I found at the bottom of a bottle during my short-lived affair with alcohol. Alcohol was for numbing, and I didn't want to be numb. I wanted to feel every goddamn thing with her. I love this book so much. I'm about to finish this book, guys. Am I about to finish this book, or is this book about to finish me? I don't want to read it. I don't want to read it because I'm about to read one of the best proposals that I've ever read in a book in my life, and I don't want to read it because it literally makes me sob. I don't want to read this book anymore, okay? It is like a time jump. They've had the marriage law annulled or whatever. Reese takes Bridget back to Costa Rica, and he tells her that he bought the house, which is the house that they stayed in the first time that his buddy sort of let them stay in. And she's like, why did you buy it? Like, are you a secret romantic? He says, you tell me. And he gets down on one knee. He opens the box. He says, I'll keep this simple. He's like, why is my voice shaking? He says, I never believed in love, never wanted it. I didn't see the practical value, and to be honest, I was doing just fine without it. But then I met you. Your smile, your strength, your intelligence and compassion, even your stubbornness and your hard-headedness. You filled a part of my soul I always thought would be empty, and you healed scars I never knew existed. This is my favorite. And I realized it's not that I didn't believe in love before. It's that I was saving it all for you. This is why this is a Roman Empire book for me. Are you kidding me? All right, Twisted Games is done. Guys, this book is fantastic. There is a reason why it's a Roman Empire for me. It is just everything. And I want to read you guys, when I first started reading like romance a couple years ago, when I finished the book, I actually used to write on the last page, and I wrote, screaming, crying, throwing up. This is honestly my favorite book I've read this year. So sweet, funny, steamy. I was hooked straight away. The perfect modern fairy tale. Reese and Bridget, I love your love. Going down in the history books. 5 out of 5. I was so worried to reread this book because I really was worried that I wasn't going to get the same feeling that I got when I read it for the first time. And of course, you're never going to feel that feeling that you get when you read a book for the first time, when you know what's going to happen. I just felt everything that I remember like feeling the first time, like one of the most beautiful love stories that I have ever read. It's still a Roman Empire, and I'm so happy that I loved it as much as I did the first time. Okay, bestie boos, we made it to the end of the week, and I thought I would quickly do a little summary and talk about the books that I got through this week. I am so happy. Like I sort of said, you guys saw like the turmoil I was in at the beginning of this video, where I really just like wasn't enjoying reading. I was struggling to read. Like I just needed to kick that sort of slump, and obviously this is a video that I know you guys wanted for a long time. Now, you guys probably noticed that I didn't get around to Heartstopper, so I thought I would do a part 2 of this video at some point. So if you guys want to see certain books that you know I love, you want me to reread them, put them in the comments. I will do Heartstopper, I promise. I just didn't want this video to be like 2 hours long, and I feel like it's going to be long enough as it is. Yeah, I'm just very happy. We obviously started off the week with Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. I still will always have the most fondest memories reading this book. I still think this is probably my favorite book to this day. Red, White and Royal Blue is so fun and silly and sentimental. I will always love these two. And I forgot how much I love Alex Claremont Diaz as a character. And then of course, finished off Twisted Games. And this was probably the one that I was the most worried about, as I was sort of saying, because I was worried that it was not going to be as good as it was when I first read it. And it is. Like, I spent the last hour after I finished this book just crying about it because it's perfection. Anyway, you guys, that is all for today's reading vlog. Thank you so much for sticking through all the way to the end if you did. I really appreciate it. As always, if you guys aren't already, you're more than welcome to follow me on my socials. I'll leave my handles on the screen and in the description box. And if you'd like to, you can like this video and subscribe to my channel. And make sure you are hitting that notification bell, that way you're notified each time a brand new video goes up. Thank you guys so much for stopping by again. I really, really appreciate it. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having a lovely day or a lovely night. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!